Good morning, comrades. Are you watching Chernobyl? It is an excellent movie show. It's an HBO thing. It's 6 episodes or 7, maybe even 8. And in this episode, spoiler alert, this is one of the main characters, and he is explaining how Chernobyl exploded, and he's explaining it to the court. And these tiles are important. And watch the show; it's really interesting. They do a really good job. If you want to watch a show about Russians with British accents, I recommend Chernobyl. But my point here is, right after this scene, he says something that is against the state. He shares a state secret, because the state secret is the reason Chernobyl exploded. Spoiler alert, right? And he knows that he's not allowed to say this thing. He's not allowed to say it. He's not allowed to say it in open court. He's allowed to talk to other people who know about it, kind of, but he's not allowed to warn people. He's not allowed to say it. After he says it in open court, they scrub it, basically. They tell him in extremely detailed language how he doesn't matter, how what he said will never get out. They're going to scrub the record. All the people in there are going to be told not to share it. No problem. You don't matter, sir. It doesn't matter what you say. We'll scrub the record anyway. And in Canada, the parallels are frightening. And you may think that I'm drawing the parallel to Mr. Cooper, who read into the record of the Justice Committee on online hate speech that the Christchurch manifesto, or the Christchurch shooter, uploaded to Facebook, that was then scrubbed and then made illegal in New Zealand. Right. And that got scrubbed. So you may think I'm drawing a comparison to that, but I am not. The comparison I'm drawing to is Lisa Raitt. Lisa Raitt posted this on Twitter yesterday, and this is a screenshot because she's deleted it, but I'll read it out. Lisa Raitt at @LRaitt says, quote, "Bottom line is there's no solid connection between climate change and the major indicators of extreme weather, despite Trudeau's claims to the contrary. The continual claim of such a link is misinformation employed for political and rhetorical purposes." And this is the same link that Mr. Bernier has shared. Ross McKittrick, this scientist proved climate change isn't causing extreme weather, so the media attacked. And fast forward, I'm sorry, Miss Raitt, you can't talk about that. I'm sorry. And everybody let her know on Twitter, and she's retracting the statement. Here's Miss Raitt a couple hours after tweeting the tweet I just read out. She says, quote, "Well, I've learned my lesson in tweeting anything about climate change. I'm going to be transparent and let you know I'm deleting the earlier tweets. I'm not the one to fight on this because, like most, I believe that emissions cause climate change and we should reduce emissions." Oh, right. So here's this article that I'm tweeting because it kind of, proves a point that is not about emissions, that is about the cost of storms. And instead, she bows and says, oh, wait, I misspoke. And the reaction isn't great. The reaction wasn't great to the first tweet, wasn't great to the next tweet. But it's so interesting to me that, now, if you don't know the term useful idiots are people who believe in the state-driven propaganda, and they will back it up, right? Like your brother, your uncle, your cousin, your wife, your husband, it doesn't matter. They're the people who believe, they bleed red and white. They bleed red, white, and blue if they're American. These people who, it doesn't matter what the state says, the state is 100% right? And I've seen all the evidence, and the evidence is manufactured to prove to the people who believe it, that it's true, right? And these useful idiots have been weaponized against anybody who questions the state. And, well, that's interesting. That's an interesting parallel to draw between Soviet Russia, the USSR, during the Chernobyl crisis, and modern-day Canada, right? And in multiple different scenarios. We've got Justice Committee people, testimony being scrubbed. We've got Lisa Raitt being bombarded by constituents, and I'm sure that there was some top-down pressure, although I don't know for sure. Andrew Scheer, did you tell her to take that tweet down, or did she decide by herself? Not sure. Nobody's sure really what the Conservative Party's stance on climate change is. But, Andrew Scheer, I'll get that out before the 21st. Maybe, probably. But I find this so interesting, right? You better drum that party line, comrade. So weird. This story almost made the lead, but I've been watching Chernobyl and turning this over in my head, and I thought, man, I got to start with Chernobyl. But this is a crazy one. So I saw this, and I'm on Duolingo for my French, right? I've got 584 days on Duolingo, which is good. And so I could suss out a little bit of this, FBI and University of McGill and spying. That's what I got kind of here. And so I found an English article, and wow, Terry Glavin says, holy crap. And I agree, Terry. Holy crap. Here we go. The Epoch Times is translating. Canadian professor accused of stealing technology for China had funding from Ottawa in the same period. A McGill University professor accused of involvement in a years-long scheme to steal U.S. technology for China's military received hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal funding from Ottawa during the same period, a report by La Presse says. Last year, the FBI arrested American citizen Yi Chi-shi, sorry if I got any of that wrong, and Kit An Mai, on charges of scheming to steal military technology from an American company to export to China. Yi Shi-shi's brother, Isha Shi, a Canadian professor teaching electrical engineering at McGill University, is also suspected of helping in the scheme. La Presse says a PowerPoint presentation filed in a Los Angeles court, which was seized by the FBI as part of their investigation into the case, shows details on latest models of Japanese and American missiles, as well as the latest fighter jets and combat systems used by the United States and its allies. The presentation, which includes the names of the Shi brothers on the bottom, also includes plans for a large factory in China to produce microchips capable of competing with the present technology from other countries. According to the French language publication, the FBI alleges that the ultimate goal of the technology theft, which the brothers allegedly began plotting in 2006, was to build a high-tech factory in China, in communist China, to produce capitalistic microchips. They just want to make money for businesses and military applications, right? Guys, just a quick aside. You know the Project Sidewinder is the Chinese military trying to take over businesses to have control at very important nexuses, right? Like if you control all of the video monitoring for Ottawa, if you are a Chinese company and you purchase a video monitoring company in Ottawa, and then that video monitoring company gets a defense contract, you own that company and you're in China. And the Chinese government has a vested interest in all of its businesses, all of the businesses in China, right? So look up Project Sidewinder. I've done a lot of reports on it. It's interesting and very, very scary when you understand how they do this, how they, being the Chinese, this is their military strategy. This is a military strategy being laid bare in the public, in the press. It's incredible, really. Like, this is spying on the Western allies openly. Okay, back to the article. La Presse adds that while this scheme was allegedly ongoing, Isha Shi received more than $500,000 in funding from the federal agency, National Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, for his research on microchips. And we're funding it. We're giving them our taxpayer dollars. Yeah, right. Okay, back to the article. According to La Presse, the United States wants Isha Shi, who denies any wrongdoing, to be extradited. That's going to be fun. The extradition request is still under review by Canadian authorities. The case comes amidst another high-profile extradition case involving China. In December, Canadian authorities arrested Huawei chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou on U.S. extradition request. Meng is suspected of fraud related to violating Iran sanctions. Tensions between Canada and China have been escalated since the arrest, with China accusing Canada of grave consequences if Meng is not released. Chinese authorities have since arrested 2 Canadian citizens in apparent retaliation and have blocked Canadian exports of canola and pork to China. And it's not going to get any better. Really, like, wake up if you think that it is. Here's the last story for today, and this is back to domestic issues. And again, really interesting parallels. Well, you'll see what I mean. Senate slaps down its own committee on Bill C-48, and C-48 lives on. Bill C-48 is the tanker ban, the Northern Coast tanker ban, but we'll get there. What a country! Or to put it another way, what? A country? On Wednesday evening, the full Senate refused to kill Bill C-48, the so-called tanker moratorium, by a whopping margin of 53 to 38. That bill forbids export of Alberta petroleum products off BC's north coast. It has been roundly slammed as discriminatory, divisive, and dangerous to national unity. A Senate committee, after months of hearings, testimony, and submissions, has recommended the bill be amended. But now the Senate itself rejects the decision of its own committee. This has only happened 6 times since 1996, according to Alberta Senator Doug Black. I scroll down just a little bit. Simmons, whose dramatic earlier vote tipped the committee against Bill C-48, says some senators were uncomfortable with a committee killing a piece of government legislation. They want full Senate debate, amendments, and then a third reading. But as Senator Black says, quote, "There's no making this right. There's no solution for Alberta except to kill it. This is just so frustrating." That C-48 is poison in any form is also the view of UCP Premier Jason Kenney, and before him, NDP Premier Rachel Notley. Quote, toss C-48 in the garbage where it belongs, she told the Senate committee via video link. This is a nonpartisan issue within Alberta, but it certainly is on the national stage. For the Senate to overrule that committee is very disappointing, maddening, Alberta Energy Minister Sonia Savage said in an interview. You have a committee that went around the country and heard from experts, and the committee itself became expert. They gave reasoned consideration and came to the conclusion that the bill should be killed. For the Senate to overrule that committee is very disappointing. There's some who might want to fix it, but you can't fix that bill. There's no pathway to make Bill C-48 work, Savage says. Alberta will find a constitutional challenge, but if the bill goes ahead, that bill is directly aimed at Alberta. It is discriminatory. It landlocks us from getting our products to market. We are going to get very loud and noisy with a number of other provinces and industry associations and Indigenous groups who oppose the bill. Savage still feels the best solution is the death of Bill C-48 in the hands of the full Senate. In the vast writhing nest of Ottawa's procedural possibilities, there is a chance that it could happen. Simon says he's now working on possible amendments with some other senators, but if the premise is inherently flawed, the notion that Ottawa can intentionally landlock a province's resources, why tinker with it? Well, some senators who propose amendments may not want them to pass at all. Rather, they'll be trying to run out the clock until the Senate adjourns for the summer. Bill C-48 would then die on the order of paper and not be a non-issue in the election. There's also the background sense that the Trudeau Liberals won't go to the wall for C-48, even though it was never a priority. It's now an eternal dark cloud on the western horizon. They're also ready to approve the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion within a couple of weeks. After paying $4.5 billion for that honor, do they really want Kenney and his allies using C-48 to snatch back all that goodwill? There's also the strange fact that Bill C-48 isn't about anything specific. No current active pipeline proposal exists for the North Coast. Even if one were approved, we wouldn't see a northern line for a decade or more. One Ottawa guy asked me Wednesday why C-48 bothers me so much when it doesn't block a project. I asked him why he needs C-48 so much when there's no project to block. Such a Canadian moment. What? A country? And yeah, I find this very interesting. We've got experts who went across the country and came back to the Senate and gave their testimony, and despite the testimony, doesn't matter. What the state says goes, right, Comrade? You don't go against what the people in Ottawa say, because that's not going to go well for you. It's so interesting. It's so interesting, the parallels. And I understand that the Senate is not being necessarily pressured, that I know of anyway, by anybody outside here, and they're looking at it strictly from a lawmaking standpoint, I suppose. But it's interesting that a group of experts can go around a country and come back and say, this isn't the right thing to do. And everybody can understand that it's not the right thing to do. And yet here we are standing on the other side of this. And, well, not the right thing to do is moving forward. And it doesn't seem to matter. The lumbering moving forward of the state with no clear direction other than wrong is just so prevalent in Trudeau's Canada, right? Everything seems to be a misstep, from marijuana to the new driving laws to, pipelines and SNC Lavalin. The list goes on and on and on, and everything. NAFTA negotiations seems to be an error. Saudi Arabia, Twitter costing $100,000 for cabinet ministers. Why aren't they doing their own Twitter? Everything is a disaster. Everything is a mistake. These people don't know what they're doing. And they shove that we don't know what we're doing down everybody's throat. Incompetence writ large. It's just so discouraging. So sad for a country like Canada. We're so rich, and we're so passionate, and we're so willing to work hard and be generous with what we have. And yet, they tell us we're racist and that we haven't given enough and that our veterans are asking for too much right now. Well, so they simultaneously increase spending for health of foreign people, women and girls, by $300 million a year, but our vets are asking for too much. This is, it's just so beyond the pale, and the parallels are too rich to ignore. My goodness. Thank you for watching, everybody. A 15-minute video. This is about the right amount of time, so thank you for watching. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca and have a wonderful, wonderful Sunday.